it's Jess. Welcome back to my channel. Buckle up because today's video is gonna be a long one. It's my March wrap up and I have 12 books to talk to you about today. I don't know how this happened because one of my reading goals for the year is to read less. And yet here we are. I read 12 books. Make it make sense. March was actually an amazing reading month though. Overall, I had an absolute blast. I had so many 5 stars in the month of March, and I also feel like it was a really good reading month because I read from a lot of different genres. I read contemporary romance, I read fantasy romance, I read high fantasy, I read fantasy set in our world. I read science fiction, which I very rarely read. I have a thriller. I have manga to talk to you about. It's a really great month. Okay, this video is already going to be too long, so let's just dive in. I'm going to start with the books that I read on my Kindle, basically because I don't have them physically and I don't want to forget to talk to them. So I read God of Malice by Rena Kent. Basically, I was in the mood for something absolutely unhinged. So I was looking on Goodreads at reviews of people whose taste I trust, and I came across this review by Kate Literature, Caitlin, and I will post a screenshot of this review and link her Goodreads. I don't remember the exact words, so that's why I'll post a screenshot, but she basically said, this book is 5 stars, she's abandoning feminism. And I was like, absolutely, sign me up, I'm gonna read that. So this is a contemporary dark romance. You follow this girl who, she's a grown woman, they're in college, and basically this man just gets obsessed with her. It's really hard to describe because there's not really a plot that goes along with it. He just is obsessed with her and he's like, you're gonna be my girlfriend, and she's like, I don't want to be your girlfriend, and he's like, I literally don't care. And you know what, honestly, this man is all of the red flags, all of them. He is terrible. He's also a sociopath, potentially a psychopath, because to be honest, I don't really remember the distinction between psychopath and sociopath. And this is also a dark romance, so I don't necessarily recommend this book. This is one of those books where if you want to read it, I feel like you will find it. You know, if this is the content that you're looking for, you are specifically looking for it and you will find it on your own. The love interest in this is also part of this fraternity type situation, but the fraternity is run sort of like a gang, and all of them are the children of people involved in some type of crime or mafia or something like that. You read this because the book is unhinged. That's why you read this book, because it is absolutely 100% unhinged the entire time, from page 1 to the end, unhinged. I'm so sorry about how chaotic this review is. I did not realize how difficult this book was going to be for me to actually talk about. When I finished this book, I actually rated it 4 stars on my Kindle. Right away I finished it, rated it 4 stars. And then I was thinking about the book afterwards, and I got really annoyed with some of the side characters. Basically I lowered their rating from 4 to 3 on Goodreads because of the side characters. But now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I'm is that fair? Because the side characters don't get very much screen time, and really it's only 2 of them. I found 2 of the side characters extremely annoying, but I think I might actually bump it back up to 4 stars on Goodreads, because I'm is it really worth knocking an entire star off just because these characters are annoying and it's only 2 side characters in the whole book? I don't know. But if you are thinking of picking up this book, I did just want to make it clear that part of the darkness of this dark romance is that it is dubious and non-consensual situations. As long as there are clear warnings at the beginning of the book and it is demonstrated by the author that they understand this is like not a normal circumstance, and like I don't feel like the author is like actually condoning dubious or non-consent, then I'm okay with that within like a dark romance book, because I know that there are reasons that people like that content. Like, that is, to be perfectly honest, that is a kink. People have that kink for a myriad of reasons. And listen, we don't have time to go into all of that. One thing that I really liked about this one, though, is that the author knows and like kind of plays with why people like this type of content, and like the characters don't break the fourth wall, but at the same time there's like almost this like borderline of breaking the fourth wall where like the author is like, I know why you're here, and I see you, and I validate that experience. I really like it when authors are self-aware like that, and they kind of poke fun at why we like certain content or certain tropes within books. And this time it just happened to be about that topic. And I don't know, I just think that that's a really fun and like also validating thing for the author to do. I liked it. I appreciated it. So yeah, that's a dark romance book. I read it super, extremely unhinged. Entertainment factor through the roof though. So, you know, do with that information what you will. Next up, I want to talk about another romance. It is a contemporary romance. It's Consider Me by Becca Mack. I rated this 3 stars. It is a hockey romance. It's my first time reading a hockey romance. Like, I get the appeal of sports romances. I'm not sure how I feel about them in general. I like haven't made up my mind. And to be honest, I don't read enough contemporary romance to really even know what I like within that genre. I get the appeal, but like also as someone who has like worked with athletes, they suck. Like, some of them are like, they are the worst. And some of them, I just want to punch them straight in the throat. So at times when I was reading this book, because it is a hockey romance, like there were times where I was like, ooh, that is not how hockey players act, those dicks. I get it. Like, this is a romance, and this is like a very happy, fluffy one. I understand that my personal experience is not the same as everyone else's. Like, this is just my personal lens that I am looking through this, but it does give me a bit of a hard time, at least with this book. Maybe if you're a contemporary romance reader, you can recommend me some other sports books that I could like try out to see if like maybe it was just this one that didn't like resonate completely with me, or maybe I just shouldn't read sports romance. I don't know. Overall, I did really like this book. So the main character is a gym teacher, which I liked. I thought that that was a really good choice, especially considering the love interest is a professional hockey player. The love interest is a playboy, and he's like very adamant that he does not want a girlfriend, has no interest in relationships, but he does it in like a very straightforward way where like the women that he hooks up with, like they know the situation, you know, like he's very upfront and forward, which I do appreciate. The main character is very monogamous. She's like, I only do relationships. And so obviously that is like the main source of tension between the two of them. I will say that I thought there was a lot going for this book. I just don't think that it was perfectly for me. I really liked the characters. I liked both of them. Do I remember either of their names? No, but I really liked both of them. The love interest definitely has like golden retriever energy, but like not the way some people use it. He has golden retriever energy in that he's like, hey, what you doing? What's going on? Hey, you want some food? Hey, I want some food. You want to go for a walk? And like he's just very earnest, but also very intense about everything he does, which does honestly fit the fact that he is like a professional athlete. Athletes are very intense about things. He is like a little bit obsessive, but not in a stalker way, in a very endearing way. And I also really liked the main character. I thought she was well-rounded. Her motivations made sense. She was very, very fun to read from her perspective. And I did really enjoy the banter between the two characters. I loved it. There were moments where I was sitting on my couch smiling. However, at the same time, there were moments that were cringe. Like, both of the characters are very into Disney, which is not something that I care about or like I don't find them being into Disney cringe, but I did find some of the lines that they said about Disney cringe. Like, I don't think that I can take someone using verbatim dialogue from the movie Frozen as a way to flirt with somebody seriously. The only other thing that didn't work for me, and I want to make it clear this is a me thing, not the book thing, because I can tell that like this is an intentional choice that the author made to put into the book because it's meant to be escapism. When there is a conflict between the two characters, they resolve it in a way that feels too perfect. When they sit down and have a conversation and like talk about their issues and their problems and figure out like how they're going to move forward, there were times where I was like, real people don't talk like this, and they don't always recognize their emotions so easily as they grow as people. Like, in retrospect, you can be like, oh yeah, that's why I reacted like that. But it just felt like it was like too perfect to be happening in real time. However, if what I've said about this book interests you and you don't have like the weird little hangups that I do, then I think you could really, really enjoy this book. Next up, I read the second book in the Plated Prisoner series. This is a fantasy romance. It is a King Midas retelling. You follow the main character, Orin, and she is King Midas's like favorite concubine because she has been entirely gilded gold. Her skin, her pupils, her hair, she is gold head to toe. Honestly, I can't really talk about what happens in book 2 at all without having massive spoilers about book 1, but I loved book 2. I actually thought it was really, really great. It was a massive, massive step up from book 1, in my opinion. I do think like at times it was a little bit overwritten in like the metaphor area, but honestly I really didn't notice that the further I got in the book, because like the more pages I read, the more I got like so engrossed in this story and I was just eating it up. I loved it. I thought it was great. This is a series that I think you should read if you like watching characters grow and learn about themselves. It's also a book that heavily features themes of emotional abuse and manipulation and characters realizing what is going on and how people are manipulating them and using them and like breaking free of these cycles and standing up on their own, realizing their own strength. While there is like a fantasy plotline going along with it, I really think that this is a book, like if you're interested in those themes, then you should read it. So far, the actual fantasy plot itself, while it is interesting, it hasn't advanced enough for me to recommend the book just based off of the plot itself. So far it is like interesting, but also I have read this story before, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I am very versed in the fantasy genre, and so there isn't really anything about the plot that is setting it apart, but at the same time it is interesting. I'm never bored. So you know what it is. Like, sometimes you just read something and you're like, I've read this story before, but I still like it, you know? Every story has already been told, so you're gonna read the same thing. Sorry. Next up, I want to talk about Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. Crichton? This is what I read for my book club in March. I feel like at this point we're all pretty familiar with Jurassic Park. This billionaire man funds all these scientists who figure out how to clone dinosaurs, and he's trying to open a dinosaur theme park. And as he's like preparing to get things up and going, he invites a bunch of scientists and also his grandchildren to come like tour the park and see how it's going and see what they have to think about it. Things go terribly, terribly, terribly wrong. So to be perfectly transparent, I have seen the movie many times. I love the movie, and I think I prefer the movie. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I prefer the movie. Now, I want to make it clear, I did like this book. However, I did struggle a little bit with it, mainly because the first half of the book is so much more interesting than the second half of the book. In the first half of the book, before things really go wrong, there's this like really great sense of like anticipation and dread that the author does an amazing job setting up, and I really, really liked that. I also really liked how he set up like the downfall of Jurassic Park, because it wasn't just like this or this, it was like a bunch of different little factors that all came together to cause this level of a shit chaos tornado. Where this fell flat for me was that there was a lot that I did not care about. So here's the thing. When you're watching this on the TV and you see that like someone is like working on the computer, like you see them working on a computer, or like if two characters are talking on walkie-talkies together, you just watch them and you just hear the conversation. But in the book, it's like, and then he said into the walkie-talkie and he relayed this information, and then the other character has to like put it into the computer. And so then like, I don't care about reading about a character typing on a computer. Like, I'm sorry, that is not interesting. And it's just, there are quite a few scenes at the end of this book that just do not translate as well on paper as they do in film. And that definitely was a major hindrance for my enjoyment of this. And then I also want to say Lex, who is the girl, like the little girl child in this. So in the movie, the girl child is older than the boy child, like the grandkids. In the book, the girl, Lex, her name is Alexis, she is younger. She is like 7 or something like that. And she is the worst. I hated her. I literally hated this child. But also, why did Grant not just be like, Lex, if you don't stop talking, we're going to die? Like, at no point did people were like, not now, Lex, not now, Lex. But like, at no point did an adult explain to her that she was about to die. And here's the thing. I understand that like, you don't necessarily want to traumatize kids, but she already had like a T-Rex try to like kill her. So like, maybe, you know, maybe she's already a little traumatized. Maybe you could tell her, hey, please be quiet when I tell you to be quiet. I hate her. She's so annoying. And here's the thing. She behaved exactly the way a 7-year-old would. And, you know, credit where credit is due. That's how a 7-year-old would act. Michael Crichton did a great job of showing how a 7-year-old would react to being in mortal danger, but not really also understanding that mortal danger is mortal danger. But it doesn't make it fun to read. I hated her so much. Those were really like the only complaints I have about this book. It's why I couldn't rate it like higher than 3 stars just based off of enjoyment. And also like another thing too is that like if a book starts off like not that great and gets better, I tend to rate it higher than if it starts off good and gets worse. I do think that like if you like the movie, I do recommend this book. I did overall have fun. I just think that the movie is better. I think that there are parts of this that just work better visually than as words on a page. Next up, I have a reread, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 1 in the Stormlight Archives, which I currently say is sort of my favorite series. I refuse to name it as my actual favorite series until the series is finished. It is not, but I am rereading this over the course of the entire year. I'm doing it in my Discord with my friends, so if you're interested in joining for the reread, we're currently on like page 300-ish of book number 2. Now, to be perfectly honest, I started this in January. We have like a whole schedule, so I'm only reading like roughly 100 pages a week at the moment in these books. I love this series. It's 5 stars. I have a hard time talking about this series because it is so big and there are so many moving parts, but the basic premise is there are these 2 races of sentient beings within this world, and 6 years before the start of this series, the leaders of the Parshendi, who are one of those races, hired an assassin to assassinate the king of one of the countries of like the human races. So this like kind of like sparked a war between like this country and then like the Parshendi, who really only have like one country. Like their racial population is much smaller than the human population in this world. And so now we're 6 years after that, in the middle of this war, and you primarily follow 3 main characters. Kaladin, who is a slave. You follow Shallan, who is a noble woman, but she is younger and she is a scholar. She's trying to save her family, who have come onto some really hard times. And then you follow Dalinar, who is the king's uncle. He is the brother of the king that was assassinated. I love this series. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. You absolutely should read it. But like, that's all I'm going to tell you because there's too many moving parts. This is 1,000 pages. Like, I cannot tell, like, I can't really get into it, but I love this series. Read it, please. I also finally finished Lord of Gold and Glory. This is another book that I have been working on for multiple months. This is a fantasy romance where you follow this woman. She has spent her entire life on this island and she has magic due to like this ancestor like way back in her line, but she is forced to keep the magic a secret because like all magic of the type that she has comes from Fae. So it means that like one of her ancestors way back in the day banged a Fae. Like the human population hates the Fae because they're basically all enslaved by the Fae Queen, who is evil. Except then one day, obviously, this Fae man comes to her island and he sees her using magic and whisks her away because it turns out her magic, because it's been kept secret her entire life, it means that she has not had her magic bound to this evil queen. Every other Fae has been forced to bind their magic to the queen against their will at birth. Because she has not had her magic bound, she can fight back against the queen. And so this man is like, I'm gonna kidnap you and we're gonna kill the evil queen. It's a pretty basic fantasy setup, but I do really like this series. I rated the first book 4 stars. This one is like a 3.5, and it really just because it kind of does feel like a little bit of middle book. At the end of book 1, something happens that I'm not gonna tell you, and then because of that, where the characters are in the second book, things are a little bit different. And due to what's going on, the main character is not like separated from the love interest, but like they're doing separate things. The main character basically starts like training really, really hard so that she can like become a better warrior. To be honest, most of the time, like a training montage in a book doesn't really work that well for me. And that was like part of the reason why I didn't enjoy this. But then also, I really like the main character and the love interest. Like, I like the banter, I like the dynamics between the two of them, and it is a major driving factor for my enjoyment of this series. So the fact that the two of them spend so much time apart also kind of dropped my enjoyment for this. But one thing that I will say is that I really loved getting deeper into the politics and the world building within this world. I appreciate those touches. I also like that we are seeing some of the backstory of the love interest, but like also the love interest is like morally gray. He's done a lot of really, really evil things in his life, like war crimes. He's committed war crimes. And you learn about him and like why he is changing and has changed and why he was the way that he was. And what I like about this one is that we see the ramifications of what he has done in this series. And I think a lot of the times with like a morally gray love interest, it's like, yeah, they committed war crimes. Oh, well, moving on. And so I did like looking at how hated the love interest is by so many people. And it's like, yeah, you should hate him. Like, look at what he did. And at the same time, I still really like the love interest as a character. You know, I don't know what that says about me that I really like this man that has committed war crimes, but I do. Like, you know, he is changing, he is growing as a character, he is trying, and he still isn't perfect. And I like that the book shows how people can change and grow, but shows how that does not necessarily mean that they are entitled to forgiveness. It does not mean that they did not cause harm. It doesn't mean that they are not going to have to deal with the consequences of all the harm that they have caused. I do recommend this series. I think it's fun. The magic system is also like all about like mixing colors and like the different primary colors do things, so like you can mix them together. It's a cool magic system. Is it explained? No, but it's still pretty cool. So the next two books I'm not going to talk about at length. I read them both for a vlog for my BookTube Knockout series. The first being The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. This is a fantasy series where people have elemental magic and also like swords. It's great. It's great. It's great. Like, it's so good. It's so good. I love this. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. If you like really, really well executed like martial art scenes, if you like elemental magic, and if you like stories where the primary character dynamics are like families working together through like crisis situations, this is a book for you. Genuinely, like, no notes, this book is perfection. I love it. It's so good. I know I'm not the only person saying it. Like, this book is rated insanely high on Goodreads, but it's worth it. It is so good. For the same vlog, I read Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This is a fantasy set in our world in which witches are real. They're in hiding, but there's also like a sect within the government of witches, and they basically like help deal with supernatural crises in the country. You follow 4 women who kind of like grew up together and trained together to be witches, and then now as adults they are less in contact with each other. But at the beginning of this story, there's kind of this prophecy that like pretty much the Antichrist is coming, and a giant demon of fear is going to be summoned to the world, and everything is going to suck, and the world's probably going to end. I love this. I also gave this 5 stars. It's so fantastic. Again, if you want more of my thoughts, like, I will have that vlog linked below, but like, it's so good. It's so perfect. This is definitely not a book that is for everyone, and I talk about why I think certain people might not like this book in that vlog, but it worked for me. It is so good. I definitely think that you should read this book. Next up, I have 2 more books that I also read for a vlog, sort of. So I am going to be quick. I read the highest and lowest rated books on my physical TBR. And so one of those was A Wilderness of Stars by Shay Earnshaw. I DNF'd this book at roughly 50%. I loved the writing style in this book, but there were just too many plot holes that I just could not keep reading. I was like, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, this is stupid, this is stupid, this is stupid. And I was like, I cannot do it. Because like in addition to all the plot holes, the main character, Vega, is just the blandest, most boring character I've ever read. Unfortunately, this book did not work for me. I did DNF it. I'm very sad because I have loved Shay Earnshaw in the past. We will see if I pick up what she puts out next. Thankfully, though, the other book that I read in that vlog was a 5-star read, and that was Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. This is one of his secret projects, and in this you follow Yumi, who is this like religious spirit summoner and also painter who lives on a different world, and Painter is a nightmare painter. And one day the spirits basically are like, Yumi, can you help us? We're trapped. And Yumi's like, yeah, sure. And so the spirits kind of do this like Freaky Friday situation where they put Painter's consciousness in Yumi's body and Yumi's consciousness in Painter's body. The two of them are together, but they are the only people that can see the other. So when Painter is in Yumi's body, he can see Yumi existing near him, but no one else can see Yumi, and then vice versa on Painter's world. It definitely takes a while to get going, but this book made me cry. It's so cute and endearing. I recommend this if you like that Freaky Friday type of premise, but I also recommend this for people who enjoy those quieter type of fantasies where it is very real stakes. Like, I don't want people to think this is low stakes because it's not, but it is one of those fantasies where ordinary people living their ordinary lives, doing very mundane jobs, are able to fix like these massive world problems. And even though the stakes are actually quite high within the book, it does feel like a quieter, softer fantasy, and it worked. Every part about this worked. I loved it. I loved the narrator of this book. 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. Check out the vlog if you want to hear more thoughts about this book. So, 2 more books. The first being this Final Fantasy XIV Eorzea Academy. This is a manga. It's basically fan fiction about the video game MMO Final Fantasy XIV. So, to be perfectly honest, I only recommend this if you have played Final Fantasy XIV and you have completed the storyline and you just want to spend a silly little day in this alternate universe where all of your favorite characters are going to a school called Eorzea Academy. Basically, this manga has like different chapters in it, and each chapter is kind of like a stereotypical day in like the slice of life genre of anime and manga. Like there's like a beach episode, there's like the school fair episode, you know what I'm saying? Like if you're familiar with that, like you'll know what I'm talking about. Except obviously all of them have like little twists that make them unique to Final Fantasy. I really loved this. I'm not gonna lie, there's honestly like not a lot of substance in here, and if you're not familiar with the Final Fantasy story and the Final Fantasy characters, you're just not gonna get the point of this book. Like, you won't. It's just purely for fans of Final Fantasy XIV. And then the last book that I read in March is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This is an adult thriller, and in this you follow these 2 women. One runs this very popular podcast, and then there is this other woman who's basically just like a stay-at-home mom, except like now her children are grown adults. She's kind of like at this like time period in her life where she's like, well, what do I do now? And the 2 of them end up meeting out when they're both out at dinner because it's both of their birthdays, and they find out that they were actually born at the same hospital on the exact same day, and they kind of strike up this friendship. And then the stay-at-home mom character is like, hey, I feel like my life is about to change, and I think that you should make a podcast about me changing my life. And the woman who runs the podcast has been kind of looking for something new. She feels like the current series she's been working on is kind of getting done at this point. And so she agrees because this woman like kind of intrigues her, and then this woman begins telling her the story of her life. As the two get like more and more close, she starts to notice that like there's something like a little bit sinister and off with this woman, and she kind of begins wondering like, is this woman telling me the truth? Is she lying to me? Like, what is the actual story here? I really, really liked this. This is a thriller for the people who love messy characters. Like, all the characters in here are just so messy in a way that is so satisfying. I will say I definitely did not see everything coming in this book. There were definitely moments where I was like, but the twists were not like mind-blowing, earth-shattering plot twists. So it's more like little moments that have you being like, oh my God, ooh, but it's not like one single plot twist that is gonna like blow your mind and like change the thriller genre forever. I could not put this down. I think I read this in less than a day. I was just like turning the pages. It's so fun. It's so enjoyable. I'll probably let my mom borrow this. Like, it's so good and like, oh, it's great. I really recommend this if you like thrillers about messy people. It's so good. Okay, there you go. Those are all 12 books that I read in the month of March. So sorry for how long this video is. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. My next 4 videos should all be weekly vlogs of the Magical Readathon coming up. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope that you stay safe this week. The weather's changing, so please stay hydrated, and I'll see you in my next video. Goodbye!